Hi everyone, it's Dominic from theMSguide again, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Today I've got a pretty awesome guest. So Dr. Vicky Leavitt is a clinical psychologist who does research. She's based in New York in the States, but we're going to talk specifically today for some stuff when you're newly diagnosed. We're going to start that right now. Vicky, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, please?
Sure, thanks Dominic, and thanks for having me. So I'm a neuropsychologist, which is a little bit of neuro and a little bit of psychologist. I'm really interested in the mind and the brain and where the two intersect. And I'm particularly interested in multiple sclerosis. It's a clinical population I've been working with. I've been working with this group for over 10 years. And in my lab at Columbia University, we study things, as you mentioned, related to brain health, cognitive health, and overall health, the whole picture. My focus clinically is cognition. Cognition is everything that our brain does related to thinking and thoughts. So it's the mental functions that we perform during our waking hours. It's memory, it's language, executive functions, things like attention, multitasking, all of these things. That's the clinical answer. The real answer is cognition is who we are. It's how we see ourselves in the context of the world. It's how we define ourselves. It's our memories of the people in our lives that inform our identity. And so I think that when we talk about cognition, we must really respect how intimately related to our very soul it is.
So would it be fair to say cognition is made up partly by our past experiences, in the sense that I grew up, I was in Canada, I skied a lot. So a lot of my, should we say, my identity in those early years was based around the fact that I am a skier.
Right, absolutely, right? Those are your memories, but it's also your narrative. And one thing that I find myself talking to patients about a lot is your narrative, your story is something that you have complete control over. And so you can tell your story any way you want at any given point in your life. Your story could be, I'm a person who lives with MS, or not. Your story could be, I'm Dominic, and I do this really cool thing with people all over the world where I ask them about their lives and their experience, and I connect with people in meaningful ways, and that's who I am.
The
So
MS
this is
guide is an excuse to be nosy. Am I understanding you properly?
Oh, absolutely. You do the same thing I do. All I want to do is dig in and find out what's going on with people. So
Yeah,
all my titles and the letters after my name, it's just the way that it's my way in.
sure. Okay, yeah. It's and I appreciate what you mean. It's really easy sometimes to start talking and forget that you're using the language of, whether it's being a skier or a psychologist, or my first degree was in history. And I did something really interesting. I ended up focusing on lone actor terrorist radicalization, which, what does that have to do with MS? It's about how people construct their identity.
Mm.
So I've got some kind of peripheral historical insight into this and how people construct their identity. But it really fascinates me. If you're somebody out there and you've just had an MS diagnosis and you're digging around, and Dr. Google, anybody who says don't go on the internet, I think is mad, because who doesn't go on the internet
Right.
first? But if you're trying to find out what the hell's going on, what this is about, do you have people, because I know you see people privately,
I do. Hmm.
so how do they deal with this? I mean, I see me, you see all these people.
Yeah. It's like an experimental paradigm in resilience, right? Like take a group of people. All people are dealing with constant change. We are. That's what we're faced
Yeah.
with. And certain uncertainty, right? We are all dealing with the uncertainty of it all. But MS takes that and it like dials it up to 11. So the thing that we all as human beings have come to in some way and to different varying degrees accept the uncertainty of it all and the fears of what's to come and what might happen to us, MS takes that and dials it way up and accelerates it, and right, and so all of a
And
sudden
I think it throws in a healthy dose much more than we're comfortable with, of the unknown.
Absolutely.
And there's always
Right.
unknown, but now the level of unknown, like you say, is not gone up to 11, it's gone up to about 85.
hmm And you know what, Dominic? I sometimes find myself talking about Skinner box paradigm with people. So Skinner was this psychologist in the early 20th century who put rats into cages, and then he was studying reward and punishment. And what he found was that if you apply a punishment, right, which was a shock to their feet, at random intervals with no relationship to circumstances going on in the
Yeah.
box. So sometimes it was paired to a light coming on and sometimes it wasn't. So if you took a punishment and randomly administered it in relationship to nothing, this turned out to be the most effective way to torture a rat, basically, to make it go completely bonkers. And to me, that's kind of like MS, right? You're being randomly and unpredictably hit with punishments. So as a
Yeah.
human being, right, you go through 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 decades of your life without MS, where you learn that there's a relationship between your actions and the reactions, right? I
Hmm.
do this, I get rewarded. I do this, I get punished. It's a pairing. It's a pairing that children who are 4 understand, right? Because if you
Yeah.
hang out with a 4-year-old for longer than 10 minutes, you'll probably hear the words, "That's not fair," come out of their mouth. So we understand. What's fair is if I do good, I get reward. If I do bad, I get punished. I get it.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I really got it. Now I'm 32 and I really got it. But all of a sudden you get a mess and it just subverts that relationship that the universe has taught you and taught you and taught you. And what I'm wondering as a psychologist is how on earth do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? I think I would be unbelievably angry. Like
And Vicky, this
unbelievably.
is why I got you on to how would you suggest people deal with this? Because yeah, I mean, being immensely pissed off, I think, is number one. It's
Yep.
almost like I've seen MS being equated to the stages of grief.
Yep.
You have anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance. But it's just what do you
Yeah.
say to these people who have just sort of been Skinner boxed,
Yeah.
like randomly all of a sudden, and they're sitting in front of you just going, I think I'm losing it.
Yeah. So first of all, about the stages of grief. This is a topic that we dealt with I run support groups. I've been doing it with people with MS for over 5 years,
Yeah.
and we call it e-support. And I have a company called e-support health. But
Hey, I'll
um,
link to it.
great, thank you. But this topic, we tackled the topic of the stages of grief, and I really learned a lot. I learned so much because the questions you're asking me are the things that I pitch right back to my folks with MS, and I ask them. But what we all came to agreement on, pretty solid agreement, is that I think when you say the stages of grief, it sort of implies that we move through them. And I don't know that that's true, right? I don't know that there's some sort of a logical and orderly moving through, oh, I was in denial, but now I'm in this. Like, no, I think they're overlapping and they're shifting and they're always at play.
I've been in denial for 28 years. It works fantastically for me.
And there you are.
Yeah.
But, I think first and foremost, Dominic, to your question of like, what do you do with all the feelings that you're having? And let's talk about recently diagnosed, since we really want to focus there. First and foremost, give yourself the space and give yourself kindness, right? You can't navigate everything that's coming at you. It is the literal SHIT storm.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Oh,
it's
oh, oh, we're not censored here. It's a shitstorm. Let's
Oh,
not mince our
I know.
words.
I like
Well,
to
I'll
try to
say it. You're professional. I'm
keep
not.
it
So
clean
yeah.
for as long as I can. um, but yeah, and there's a lot. And when you talk about Dr. Google, of course, people are going to go online and look around, and that to not do so would be not to use your resources well. Well, so let's be very pragmatic and practical about how do you rein it in, right? And
Mhm.
what I would say is, to the extent possible, call in your resources, call in your most trusted friends. Make sure you have a doctor who you trust, and not just who you trust, but who you feel hears you. You need to be heard. And you need to know that when you leave your doctor's office, you were heard. Above all else, just ask yourself that question. And if you
Yeah,
have
but
to have
in
a
the
great
UK,
conversation with
you
your doctor,
often don't have the choice.
yeah, interesting.
You
Well,
know,
so
so
then go beyond, right? You need to call in
yeah,
other resources
yeah,
if it
yeah,
can't be a doctor. It can be things like the MS Guide. It can be things like eSupport Health, where we have monthly workshops that are
yeah.
free that we offer. Find and curate for yourself a collection of resources that is really high quality. And to the extent that you can make that evaluation, I mean, by the way, let me just say this first and foremost. Everything I'm saying is like not really fair, going back to fairness, because it's all on you. You're the patient, you're the one who's trying to deal with this. And I'm saying, do this and curate a good, and you're like, you know what, Dr. Leavitt, I'm a little tired. I'm dealing with something over here.
Yeah.
And just like so many of the most pernicious of MS symptoms, it's in your head. And so you wonder and you question yourself and you second guess yourself. Is this
Yeah.
real or is it, is this what I've had so many patients sit across from me and say, I'm just wondering if this is normal aging. And I'm like, well, you're 34, so I'm gonna say no. Like, you shouldn't be in your doctor's office when you're 34 saying, is this just normal aging? Like, that's not when we think about age-related cognitive decline kind of kicking in. You've got another 3 or 4 decades to go. So if you're
Yeah.
having this feeling that something's off, it's okay. Like, validate that for yourself and talk to somebody about it. Find a doctor, find a, nurse practitioner, whoever it is in your
Yeah.
world of
So
healthcare.
you were saying, so there's, if I'm going to summarize some of this so far, it's sort of curate your sources and get good, reliable ones, get friends. I mean, you can change doctors in the UK, but also when you're diagnosed, you don't know. Many people have had zero contact or very little with the medical profession. How do you assess what a good doctor is? Because in my mind, there's a difference between you can be lovely and nice and friendly to me. You might still be a terrible doctor, but you're making me feel at ease because I'm frightened to death, and you're a friendly, nice, smiling face. The fact that you're getting nothing done from me is very hard for me to work out. So I think it's very hard to mediate all this massive information. You said something to me the other day about people should take some time just to step back. And
Yeah.
I mean, can you
Yeah.
talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, really, again, like take a breath and realize that you have the rest of your life to figure this out.
Yeah.
On the day that you figure it out, call me because I want to know what I want to know what you've. But yeah, take your time and go slow. Take a breath, and then look around and call in your most valuable resources, the people in your life who you trust. You can't do this alone. I'm a huge proponent of don't go it alone because we
Yeah.
don't have to. And I think as human beings, and this is a major focus of my laboratory's research, we are doing something wrong as human beings in this moment in history, which is we are not using each other as a resource to nearly to the extent that we always have in the past, right? We're tribal animals.
Yeah.
We run in tribes. We work together. We hunt and gather together. We've always pulled together and worked with each other. It takes a village, right? All these things. It,
Some of my best advice I've received has been from friends, and it has almost been unwitting. We haven't necessarily been trying to, shall we say, drill down on a problem, specific to me or them or whatever. But you're talking about something and they say something else, and it's just like, oh gosh, yes. It's and my favorite one I heard the other day about worry was this man was being interviewed and he had been blown up in Afghanistan. He had one arm left. And they were saying to him, he was a bomb disposal guy where things had gone horribly wrong. And they were talking to him and he was very sanguine. He said, well, my wife can get quite worked up about things. And then she snaps at me and says, are you worried? And he said, would it help? And I thought, yeah, I mean, just little things you pick up sometimes. And I think, yeah, am I worried? Would it help to be worried? Because some people I see get terribly worried about things.
Mhm.
How do
Right.
I disengage and kind of try and level out a bit?
Right. I think you're talking about sort of the paralysis of terror. And I think that that can hit in waves.
Yeah.
So, what I like to do with my patients is bring some organization to the chaos because getting hit with a wave of terror feels like chaos, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
utterly
all
chaotic. How do you make it? People go, make notes when you go see a neurologist and you're thinking, I'm just going, oh my God, why
right.
did my left leg go to sleep yesterday?
Right.
Da da da.
So what I like to do, because I think that it's very useful and constructive, is is to start to look for patterns and organize things into meaningful bins. So, okay, you've told me that you're getting hit by a wave of terror. When? What time of day does it happen? How many times a day does it happen? Let's chart this. Are you literally paralyzed? Are you able to continue with your activities, or do you come full stop? How do you spend your time to get through that terror? Is your mind spinning? Are you having racing thoughts? Like, really observe yourself, make a study of yourself. And this is really what you're going to do for the rest of your life with MS. You're making a study of yourself, but there's a way to do it that will be constructive, right? The better you know yourself, the better you will be able to articulate that to your healthcare practitioners and to the people in your life, who are your support system. And I think that control can start to really turn things around. I know from watching patients that I've worked with in this way that it changes the shape of the anxiety, the terror, the debilitating thoughts and cognitions that can come into our heads that can hold us back.
So people are going to take one thing away from this video. I've just been diagnosed, is to stop, take a deep breath, and almost try and stand outside yourself and write things down. Literally make a timeline of, I freak out 1 o'clock every day. It starts to come on, I start to feel it. I finish my lunch, I pause, and then I think, and then, okay, so I make this list. I've started to observe myself. I'm probably getting insight myself into me. What do I do with this? To whom is this charting that I've made going to be useful?
Well, it's for you, but you can decide, right? Now you can decide. First of all, knowledge is power. Now you know. Now you've done that. Maybe you've been making little notes. And by the way, this doesn't have to be some daunting, formidable process. Like, please don't go out and spend $80 on a moleskin notebook to get yourself going. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
my PhD thesis of concern. Oof.
People tend to get nuts when with little tips and tricks. Tips and tricks are only good if they work for you, and they're only going to work for you if you do them. So find the way. Maybe you're scratching something on a slip of paper on your bedside table, but maybe after you do that 3 nights in a row, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm hit by this overwhelming wave of fatigue every morning around 11 a.m. I didn't realize that. Now I do. Now I can plan for it. Now I can incorporate something into my day that will allow me to anticipate that and get through it and ride it out and wait it out. This is something big, Dominic, that I talk to a lot of patients about. It's about waiting it out, right? We want everything to happen right away. We want, now I'm feeling distress. I want it to end. Of course you do, right? We're human beings. We don't. But sometimes it's about waiting it out. It's like waves of anxiety could be considered like a headache. Oh man, I've got a headache. I know that it's going to go away because I've had one before and I get it, and I'm just going to take myself out. I'm going to just lie down for a little bit, and that's that. We can do the same thing with anxiety, right? We could say, oh, I'm getting hit by a wave of anxiety. I know this is going to be unpleasant, and I'm going to wait it out. Right. If we can think about anxiety as a physiological event, a finite event, it starts to become more manageable.
I've got some friends that, and they're in various stages of their diagnosis, shall we say, from sort of 6 months into 2 years in, and just seeing them and talking to them and just going, it's okay. We've got this.
And that's the battle that we don't need to be fighting, right? I always say to my patients, it's an efficiency model. The brain is a limited capacity system. There's only so much you can do with it. We're looking ahead for people who are newly diagnosed with MS.
Sure. Yeah.
Saying, you know what? Don't flog yourself because you haven't got time for that pain. You've got to set that aside.
Yeah, it's something I say to people, but you can see them going, yeah, but I've got to do my job. I've got to do this. And you're like, man, you've got this for life.
When we think about all the ways that we berate ourselves as human beings, these platitudes, I think they deserve some really careful consideration. By platitudes, I'm thinking of things like be kind to yourself and forgive yourself. I mean, there's
easy to say.
Yep, absolutely. But really think about what that means and really think about what that would entail and think about the ways that you might be blaming yourself, right? And I think a lot of this comes back to the Skinner box paradigm, right? you've come to believe and understand that when you're punished, it's because you did something wrong. Well, now you're being punished. And I think that there's a lot of energy and effort and years of your life that can go into trying to figure out what you did wrong to deserve this. And it's not illogical, right?
Yeah.
But if you can find your path towards it's not about that, it's not my fault. The quicker you can get there, the better equipped you will be to deal with the rest of your life.
Well, Vicky, this is how we ever got in touch, was because it was something TJ Looney said in a video. He said, it's not your fault.
Yeah, that's right.
It's this whole concept of what have I done wrong? Who have I upset?
As a cognitive scientist, I absolutely have no patience in guilt. I don't believe in guilt. I believe that we learn from things that we've done and we use that knowledge to move forward. But guilt is indulgent, and it's a time drain, and it's an energy waster. So learn from what you did and then use that to adapt as you go forward.
Exactly. So anyhow, Vicky, look, I've kept you long enough. I really appreciate you investing the time today. If people get just one thing out of this, I'll be thrilled, because it's just, and I think it's give yourself space to write it down. That's my thing. I think that's a brilliant idea. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for having me, Dominic.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.